We've got Dr. Teo down here too. We should bring him up, shouldn't we?
Yes, it's very nice to meet you guys.
I'm
not going to turn my camera on because I'm lying in bed.
Oh, that'll probably make the show. Anyway, so I'll just get going. Dr. Paul, maybe I'll let you do the introduction since you're the head doctor, and I'll just.
I'll take that. But, it's hard to be head doctor with Dr. Roger Hodkinson with us and Dr. Charlie Teo, but it's a great honour to have us gathered here today to talk about what has been going on in the fight for sanity. Dr. Roger Hodkinson is a Canadian pathologist who has been forthright in calling out the insanity of government COVID policy. And I'm going to have to get out. And it's wonderful to have you here, along with Dr. Charlie Teo, who's with us, Dr. Mark Hobart, Dr. Miley Trin, and Dr. David Nixon.
Well, it's an honor to be invited. I didn't quite know the format that you had in mind.
It's okay, neither do we.
One of the things we've been doing over here is that all you doctors, like Dr. Schumacher, are all sort of alone. It's sort of together but alone. But we came up with this thing called the Hippocratics, that all of you doctors are united by you lift up to your Hippocratic oath. And so that we've been trying to reach out. So you're the first one to come in from overseas, but we think this is important to get a unity of doctors together of what you guys have done and make folk heroes out of you, which is what you guys are. You know, you've really stood up against the system. So how is it in Canada at the moment?
I kind of like the moniker Hipp. You know, it's a little bit old-fashioned, but it sits well with me to be hip. Some people call me eccentric or weird and other adjectives, but I'm still alive and kicking. I'm 82 and don't intend to stop.
There's have they backed off on the Canadian doctors with because Dr. Miley here? I mean, she's just been. Well, why don't you inform Roger, Dr. Miley?
I can't hear Dr. Hodkinson's audio. I can only hear yours.
Oh, okay. I don't know what that is.
But anyhow, I am been found guilty of professional misconduct and unsatisfactory professional conduct. So they allege that I'm practicing significantly below standard for saving a woman's life and for prescribing ivermectin for a number of people. So I've appealed I'm appealing the decision. So I've submitted my application in the Supreme Court of Appeal, which is the highest court in the state of New South Wales. So I'll be appearing in for directions hearing, the first directions hearing on Monday. So I put in a submission for an application for judicial review and appealing the decision of NCAT, which is the tribunal.
And that's been going on for about 5 years. About how many years has that been going on now?
I can't hear anyone else.
So that's been going on for about 5 years, Dr. Hodgkinson. And so
yes,
this is it.
The process is the punishment. I suspect on a balance of probabilities you'll lose, just to be pragmatic, because we all know the dice is stacked against us. The biggest decision that can you hear me at all, Dr. Miley?
Oh, she might be having some trouble. She'll probably go out and come back in.
Yeah.
But her story, Dr. Hodgkinson, she was born in the killing fields of Cambodia, escaped that as a refugee, as a young refugee.
Mm-hmm.
and taught herself to become a doctor. I mean, she's a heroic story, and yet, and when she handed out ivermectin, it was legal, and so they're just it's horrendous, and they've really tried to destroy her. I sometimes think they've tried to push her towards suicide, as if to break her, and
Well,
she's still fighting.
the process is the punishment, isn't it? And
Mm.
by the way, Dr. Miley, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, that's good. Just on a personal note, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Dr. Speaker's wife David Speaker's wife is Cambodian.
Oh,
Yeah,
Wow.
a charming lady. Yeah.
okay.
The other one below Miley is Dr. Mark Hobart. So Dr. Mark Hobart was worked in the surgery that his parents set up, and he was handing out exemptions. But I'll let Mark talk for himself. But they've also done the same to him, haven't they, Mark? Oh, you're muted. Sorry, you muted yourself, Mark.
I was suspended in November 2021, alleged that I was guilty of professional misconduct because I gave medical certificates to patients of mine who had did not want to have the COVID injection. Most of the time it was because they were incredibly fearful of it. 50% of them had suicidal ideation, so I gave them a 3-month exemption, and they suspended me for that. And I'm still suspended. I had my trial, which finished on the 16th of June this year at VCAT, and I'm still waiting for the result.
The only case before the courts that was successful in my experience, at least in Canada, correct me if I'm wrong for other jurisdictions, but it was Dr. Charles Hoff in British Columbia, Canada, who was taken right to the courtroom steps, and finally they just dropped all charges because of the massive international reputations of the assembly of experts that they presented. That was never entered as evidence. They simply didn't recognize it. They wanted to call it judicial notice to ignore it, and that was overturned. And because it was overturned, of course, the very last thing any of these so-called colleges who are actually practicing malpractice themselves, of course, the very last thing any college anywhere in the world wants is to lose a case. And it's much better to simply drop charges and recognize that we punished you enough by the process and the legal fees and so on involved. But if you could get hold of that testimony, Dr. Miley and Dr. Hobart, Mark, you might find that very comprehensive. At least it was very successful locally. I'm not aware of any other jurisdiction where charges have been dropped.
Okay. Dr. Charles Hoff.
Charles Hoff, Hoffe, Charles Hoff.
Okay,
I'm not sure if you know, but he is a South African trained, exceptionally capable GP from a very small town in British Columbia. And when he first went public on D-dimer, I mean, I'm a pathologist, I know everything. And here's this small town GP coming up with D-dimer as a way of explaining things. And I thought, this guy's got to be nuts because he's just from a small town. And he was brilliant. And I'm the idiot. And I've said so publicly. It was the first demonstration of a useful test to identify the immediate consequences. So he's a very nice man, extremely, he's got a spine. he's got a spine like you wouldn't believe. And I think he's going to be suing the college and the government of British Columbia because of the loss of reputation and the costs involved. And I believe that's underway. So that would be an incredible outcome for Charles. I'm not sure if you know, but it was the whole thing was an absolute catastrophe for him. His clinic burnt down in the small town in British Columbia. And then he went to his other home nearby where his family was. So he thought. He walked in the door and his wife presented him with divorce papers.
Wow.
And he's still smiling.
Maybe that's why.
Anyway, he's a remarkable guy. When I first saw his videos of his patients with all these weird neurologic movements, I thought that was contrived as well. I thought it was the usual story, female hysteria in a small town full of indigenous people, and they're all copying each other. And that was my initial reaction. And boy, did I have to eat my words and be humbled. The guy's absolutely brilliant and brave, and I hold him in the highest regard.
Do you have a contact for him? Could we get an email to reach out to him? We'd love to get him on.
Sure.
We've had a success here with Dr. Oosterhouse. So he was the first doctor to be deregistered. Do you want to share your story, Paul?
Yeah, I don't know if Dr. Roger remembers, but yeah, my claim to fame, I was an anesthesiologist, senior staff specialist, 32 years of service to the system. And they came after me not because of anything I did in my practice or anything involving my patients, but they used 10 of my Facebook posts as evidence for a suspension hearing. So it was purely speech. And the sort of things I was posting to my 50 Facebook friends at the time was, there is no science to back up anything the government is doing. I'm quoting, there is no evidence for lockdowns. There is no evidence for mask mandates. There is evidence that the vaccines are having marginal or no effectiveness and real risks and harms which are being suppressed from the jabs and the totalitarian lockdowns that are doing massive harms society-wide. So, yeah, my lawyer at the time in 2021, September 2021, said, oh, I think that post is problematic. Everything was true. Everything was true.
Well, with Fauci's recent testimony, that's been confirmed, hasn't it? The whole thing, everything was a lie, made up to support the political narrative.
Yes, it's actually been nice to watch, even though we wonder what sort of consequences Fauci will face for his complicity in bioterrorism. He at least seeing a narcissist like him squirm using the the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent 111 times, but the stuff that was being thrown at him, the exposition of his narcissism, his lack of science, and it's open for the whole world to see. My brother-in-law, his family were quite strict during the COVID period. They were restricting him from family, that part of the family, from the family functions, because they were dirty, because the shots prevented transmission and protected grandma.
Yeah.
And just the other day, his father apologized to him for what was happening over COVID. So I think it's been I thought we had common knowledge already maybe 2 years ago. Certainly people who were paying attention understood that it was all lies. That we were, and you were calling it out from the beginning, and we loved it. And you were furious. Have you maintained the rage, Roger? Are you still furious with what's happened?
If you want to know how much, you've got to buy me a scotch.
We have a joke
You're
over
up for
here.
that.
We have a joke over here, Dr. Hodgkinson, that you've got in the Freedom Doctors, you've got the best resting bitch face. You look pissed off. Even it's just great. You've actually given a lot of hope over here with a lot of the videos you've done where you're losing your shit. It's actually really resonates here. Above me is Dr. David Nixon. He's got the record in Australia for the most exemptions, 900. Do you want to fill him in, David?
Yeah, so I had an avalanche of people that didn't want to receive the vaccine, and I was in a position to be able to provide exemptions for 3 months. And I essentially followed Mark's lead on that. I provided a lot of exemptions outside my practice because the word got out that I was prepared to talk to people, and I tried to give preference to young people and pregnant women. It was a difficult time looking back at it, trying to understand why my colleagues weren't following the same track. It just seemed to be the right thing to do, and there weren't many of us doing it. But eventually, they declared that I was a serious threat to public health and deserved immediate suspension. So I went down that track, and they eventually analysed 132 of my exemptions and decided they were fraudulent, and I'd put grandma at risk and deserved to. So I'm allowed to reapply for registration in 2032.
Oh yeah, right. Thank you very much. Yeah. That would need to build you. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing I got involved in was actually looking at the Pfizer vaccine under the microscope. So they charged me with looking at the vaccine without getting ethical approval, and also looking at people's blood without getting the appropriate approval for research here.
As they didn't charge you with breaking and entering. There's and in the background in bed, because he's too lazy to get up, is Dr. Charlie Teo, which is like one of the world's famous cardiologists, and he too has
neurosurgeons. You meant neurosurgeons.
Neurosurgeon, sorry, yeah. And he too has been fallen foul of APRA. I mean, it's just insane. It's like a slaying of heroes.
The whole point about the exemptions was it's so utterly ridiculous to even demand it for any reason whatsoever. It's the patient-doctor relationship that determines whether or not something happens or does not. We don't have to give an explanation to anyone, and in particular, it should not be the cop-out of a religious exemption, which many people I know consider quite important because of the fetal origin way back in time. I get that. But you should not have to stand up and tell authorities that the Bible is against this. I mean, that's a massive intrusion into your right to determine your own existence. And the whole thing was so fraudulent to force doctors to bend in that direction, to give a reason that more often than not was false for why someone shouldn't get it. That is simply outrageous. And, sadly, that became universal, and the colleges all communicate, as we know, immediately. Everyone's so-called mistakes are immediately telegraphed to all the colleges in the world. We've seen Mark Trozzi and, for example, and Macus have difficulties in Florida because of that innuendo. and the secret calls that are never recorded. This has happened to so and so, don't you? Just to try and prevent them getting registered anywhere else.
That's the same with Dr. Cartland in England, who can't even coach his child's soccer team.
Yeah.
That's how.
Yeah.
So this is the reason to get you on, Roger, is to show that this is happening worldwide at the same time. So we have a few other doctors who aren't here, but these are the handful of doctors who basically stood up to the system, and they've literally been tortured. I mean, it's just been years and years and years.
Well,
dragged to the courts and everything.
The good news is that Fauci will not be imprisoned, but he will be tormented in a much worse way for the rest of his life. Every single day, he will be tormented with many and various lawsuits, and he will wish he was in jail to get away from it. He's going to die. He's going to die a contorted, miserable man, and it's wonderful.
I think he may get there. I wish him a long life and unlimited boosters.
You heard that incredible revelation about his presumed pulmonary embolus and pulmonary infarction. I mean, what a prick, to be such an influencer of major public health decisions, and knowing damn well that you yourself have been affected, and to be silent on it. That is despicable. I hope the flames lick his genitals in hell forevermore.
Yeah, and of course he was the face of public health,
Sure.
and he is the biggest evil clown and human rights critical killer in history.
Right.
I think.
Right.
He's the biggest mass murderer in history, and he's been shown definitively now to be an evil clown.
Yeah.
Locked us down, put masks on children, lied about everything, including the ability of the shots to, he knew about the potential for these shots to cross the placenta. I knew because I studied pharmacology. As part of my anesthesiology postgraduate training, I understood that nanoparticles, lipid nanoparticles, would be distributed everywhere that had blood flow. And they were saying it stays in the arm. It didn't add up. And then they, in the Fauci papers, it mentioned there was an inflammatory reaction in the amniotic fluid. So these shots, this was my greatest fear. That these shots were going to give. They're still giving the shots. I don't know what's happening in Canada, but although in Germany the Robert Koch Institute now has said we don't recommend the COVID shots for people under the age of healthy people under the age of 75. And we don't recommend it for healthy pregnant women. But the rest of the experts in Australia, we're still giving it to people over the age of 18.
Of course.
And they're still giving it to children, and they're still pushing it on pregnant women.
I'm not aware of any jurisdiction internationally where it's been totally banned. It's the mealy-mouthed titration of it into certain restricted demographics and so on and so on. They just can't bring themselves to stand up and say, for God's sake, we were wrong, and we are. That's my big beef with Trump. I'm, other than COVID, I'm a Trumper big time, but we tried to get to Trump through back channels in the States. Just to say, do the big mea culpa. The number one rule in HR is stand up, fess up, no notes, contritely, show that you're deeply, deeply sorry. And guess what? If history is anything to go by with other major events in human history, if you do that, your star actually rises. And he just can't bring himself to do that. So the word that came back through back channels, it's got to be original Trump. When you hear what he's supposed to have said, this has got to come straight from the horse's mouth. Excuse me, Dr. Miley, I'm going to be a little bit rude here. The word that came back was, why would I cut off half my dick if I'm winning? So he's not going to apologize, despite the Fauci testimony. And to a large extent, of course, Fauci was really the front end stooge. It was really Burke's, Colonel Burke's, ex-military, that was really the muscle behind the scenes. And she made sure that she was the coordinator of everything. He was just the little Lilliputian with all the money and desperately looking for fame at the end of his failed career. He'd basically done Dick. He'd actually killed kids in Africa with his HIV vaccine. He was looking for glory. And so it would have been a very brief conversation between him and Trump about warp speed and all that. He would have said, hey, Don, you know what? We can lick this thing in 6 months. And Trump would have said, you're kidding, Tony. Do it. They were both looking for fame. They're both narcissistic individuals. And that was the pact that they made. They both needed glory. And of course, it failed monstrously. The thing about it all is we are so lucky. I mean, we know how many people died largely from the vax as opposed to the virus itself. But the big thing is we are so extraordinarily lucky that the unknown consequences of this vax were at the present time, I'll come to that in a minute, at the present time were grand scheme of things relatively mild. Relatively. It could have been a monster extermination of the human race with gain of function, with totally unknown consequences. And although what's happened is, in the grand scheme of things, manageable and survivable, what may be not survivable is, of course, the incredible work of David Speaker and the work that he wants to do. You're very, very familiar with him over there, obviously. But if reverse transcription is proven to have happened in 70% of the world's population, proving it is merely step one. We've got to wait 10, 20 years to figure out what the consequences are. Because whenever you fiddle around with perfection, don't expect the outcome to be positive. It's hugely concerning to me what we may be facing, a tsunami potentially of heart disease because of the subclinical myocarditis, a tsunami potentially of dementia, a tsunami of turbo cancers in systems that are bankrupt and unable to deliver top quality medical care today. The system could be totally swamped with the consequences of reverse transcription. Now, David, you all know him very well. The travesty is he's got the samples, the semen and eggs from rejected IVF clinics. He's got the samples. All that he would need is a lab, an established lab, with all the gear and a tech, and maybe $20,000 to get the reagents to complete his planned experiment on reverse transcription. And no one wants to step up to the plate. Not even Ladapo in Florida, who initially, promised him the sun, the moon, and the stars. He's nowhere to be found.
For the people who aren't doctors, can we just hear some more details about reverse transcription? What you actually mean by that?
Oh, the vaccine is mRNA based, and dogmer is it's a one-way track, DNA to RNA to protein. Well, we know that reverse transcription going upwards from RNA to permanent inclusion in DNA. We do know that has been proven to take place in rapidly dividing malignant liver cells, HeLa cells in vitro. We do know from MIT and Uppsala in Sweden, we do know that has been shown to happen in vitro. What no one's shown is in vivo. And so step one for him is to show that reverse transcription has occurred into spermatozoa and ova. And if that's positive, which is highly likely, if that's positive, and he desperately hopes to fail, by the way, for obvious reasons, but if that is shown to be the case, the next step is the Nobel Prize. The next step is to show that a child of 2 vaccinated parents has evidence of reverse transcription into the baby's, the newborn's DNA. That shows clear transgenerational transmission with consequences that we are utterly unaware of.
Yeah, and you don't just need reverse transcription. Dr. Speaker found contamination within the Australian vials. They've all found around the world DNA contamination.
Yeah,
when
I know.
You have so you've got another mechanism fully loaded with the SV40, which is a nuclear localization signal, which basically says, take me to your nucleus. So You're providing DNA, you're providing instructions to say, take me to your nucleus. You've got the problems with C-gas sting. So just once it gets into the cytoplasm of the cell, you can start triggering cancer and inflammation and dysregulation. And then you have the kicker that it has the SV40, which was undisclosed by Pfizer to the regulators. You made a comment earlier about the end of the human race. I suspect that we've already got multiple mechanisms by which we could be facing the end of the human race, at least as we know it, because this changing of the genome of billions of people, because it wasn't a vaccine, it was undisclosed synthetic gene therapy.
Correct.
I think we've already done it. I imagine there's a lot of people who don't want to see that and the transgenerational things.
The big problem is, Paul, that this is all theory. Let's assume he shows both steps, right? And he gets the Nobel Prize, which would be his due. The most important experiment ever in medical experimentation. Let's assume that he shows that. We have to wait 10, 20 years to figure out what it's doing. We suspect all these things, but there'll be no proof until the statistics reveal what's actually happening. That's unbelievably scary, not knowing the scale and the variety of things that could happen. I mean, quite apart from the deathly things, you've got the potential for rampant autoimmune disease because of the production of all these foreign proteins that have some homology to human proteins. And, it goes on and on and on. Now, the only way I differ from some people on that scenario is I don't believe that this was intentional genocide. What I do believe is that it was scientific madness unconstrained with these megalomaniacs like Fauci looking for glory and fiddling around with the human genome in ways that they had no clue about. The consequences are obviously potentially horrific, but I think it's the consequence of, we're too smart for our own good. We can send men to the moon and we think we're so smart. But when you start fiddling around like they've been doing, I believe it was a quest for glory, not a quest for extermination.
I think also it's a great business. I mean, now they can produce vaccines really quickly. They've got rid of the development stage. And so that was the plan. Like, oh, man, we can just go, just the profit was, and it's a perfect business plan. They can't be sued. And if you do get injured, if you do survive, if you do get injured, you have to go to Big Pharma for the medication to help with the injury. I mean, I interviewed vaccine injured people. Most people I've interviewed have spent over $100,000 at least.
It's a great business. It's a great business model, isn't it? Get you sick at one end and sell you the drugs to make you better at the other. I mean, it's like tobacco all over again, right?
Except none of the drugs. No one that I've interviewed who's been injured says they've got better. They're better than they've been, but no one has actually got back to normal. That's what we hear over here. And the other thing we're seeing all the time too is young people in their 40s now dying of Alzheimer's and dementia. In their early 40s. As a pathologist, was that something you saw early on? I mean, is that something you've seen in the past?
No, I didn't see that. But I should mention a quite remarkable case report. I'm not sure if you read it, about magic mushrooms in Alzheimer's. Did you see that one at all? It was so David's nodding his head there. Some version of Enigma mushroom was given to a woman with advanced Alzheimer's, and she got 5 grams of it, and she had an initial bad reaction with almost delirium, but then she had a quite remarkable transformation in memory, in affect, how she would relate to people. It looked like her Alzheimer's was almost gone within a short period of time. And a good friend of mine, Dr. Lyle Oberg, he runs a psychedelic mushroom biopharma operation out of Kelowna in Canada. It's called Mind, MYND, Mind. And looking at it from the perspective of therapeutic benefit, obviously. Anyway, a good friend of mine's wife is trying it and seeing if it has any benefit. Sorry, that's a little side story about Alzheimer's.
I wanted to ask you a question, given your background in pathology. Dr. Arnie Burkhardt in 2021, he redid a series of autopsies that were not thought to be vaccine related. He used immunohistochemistry, spike protein to show, to show the kind of infiltrate that happened, and showed that a lot of these people actually died as a result of their COVID injection. In Australia, we cannot get a single pathologist to talk about the kinds of testing that should have been done on the at least 1,000 Australians who have been reported to a regulator. They either don't do autopsies, or they do, I believe, autopsies which have been missing the critical elements that could have shown the vaccines. And I think it's what's your thought about the failure of Australian pathologists, or perhaps Canadian pathologists, in actually doing the correct testing of people who?
I agree. I agree. To my knowledge, it's only available in one lab in Germany. There's some work in Japan going on, but of course, it's the classic explanation is they just don't want to know. When I was contacted by the wife of a pilot who died after the vax, he'd had a very thorough autopsy in Ontario. And I spoke to the number 2 forensic pathologist there. And I said, what did the immunohistochemistry show? Oh, well, we don't have access to that. We've heard it might be available somewhere, but di-da. I can tell you as a pathologist, it would maybe take $10,000 to set it up. And, the quality control in an established lab, they just do not want to know. It's willful ignorance because of the consequences of discovery.
I think it's worse than willful ignorance, Dr. Hodkinson. I think it's plausible deniability.
Yeah,
they don't want to know that which would show definitively, just like the Fauci revelations, that they've been guilty of what you've been saying all along, which is a crime against humanity.
Yeah. But could I, Michael? It's your show, but could
I just get these guys together. I'm just happy to sit here and let you talk.
I'm not sure how long we have, but could I change the subject somewhat?
Sure.
This has been the biggest fucking catastrophe in medical history. And being an entrepreneur and always looking for solutions, I'm tired of whiners. Look, we've been whining for 6 years, and dick has happened. We need solutions.
Well, what means? Oh, sorry.
I have a secret life you're unaware of. I'm chairman of a company in North Carolina that is we're the first to be able to multiplex the gold standard of Sanger sequencing for the diagnosis of infections and cancer screening, et cetera, platform technology. It's the gold standard. It's the way the Genome Project was done. It's not PCR probe based. It's using the genetic code to see incontrovertible answers. If there's no cross contamination, the result is what the result is, and it's a conclusive positive. So we've been developing this, and we hope to be acquired by a multinational to see it commercialized. That's part of the solution. I think there are 2 aspects to making sure this never happens again. One is better technology, which is what I just described. But the other method, of course, is top down, politically, and to think that we can ship as knowledgeable individuals in our own jurisdiction is ludicrous. It will never happen. There's too much vested interest and reputations at stake, money at stake, etc., for that to ever happen in a material way. Maybe retrospectively, 50 years from now, when the dust settles and the history is written and we're all exonerated and etc., but not within our lifetime. I just don't see it happening. That's why I'm currently putting all my emphasis, all my work in public speaking, such as it is, into trying to further the prospects for an independent Republic of Alberta. Because only by starting small in a geographic area that is more definable and controllable, only by starting small can you burn the institutions. If I could burn Paul Alexander's phrase here, burn the institutions down to the studs. Not in a communist manifesto sense at all, but to redefine democracy and take back control from the institutions that have caused this catastrophe of this scale. And if in fact Alberta can become independent, and that's highly questionable given the power structure, but if in fact we can achieve that, and it won't be for a number of years, given the process that's involved. This isn't going to be a unilateral declaration of independence like Rhodesia did. It would be within the current political framework. But if we could pull it off and then redefine democratic institutions, to me, this is an intoxicating outcome of what started with truckers, basically, not professionals, not doctors, not lawyers, not ministers of the cloth, politicians, but truckers started all of this. Truckers, dirty fingernail guys who I've come to love. If that can come full circle into a truly independent country of Alberta with control over its own destiny and institutions, that could redefine democracy for the rest of the world to follow. We need an example of how to redefine democracy and get us out of the corruption that we're also aware of in all the institutions. Because to my way of thinking, COVID was a fortunate event. The people that died were martyrs. If it had not been for COVID, we would have all been blundering on in our daily lives, accepting this, accepting that, a little bit of loss of freedom here, a little bit lost there, and just accommodated to it. Because most people don't really give a damn about freedom. What they do care about is what's in their pocketbook. I mean, we're the choir. I'm talking about the congregation. The congregation just wants to get home for Netflix and a joint. Take the kids to hockey, right? There's too much going on in life to make ends meet. So that prospect for Alberta being a beacon of hope for democracy, with trying to recultivate trust in our institutions, which has been demolished. Trust is the cement that holds society together. Without trust, we're isolated, we're fair game, right for the picking with the technocrats who want to control us. So I'm putting a lot of hope in success for Alberta. It will probably fail with the first referendum. But if we can get rid of the premier subsequently and have a new leader, there's a good possibility of a successful second referendum. And by the way, I just heard yesterday how close Quebec is to another referendum with a much better prospect of success than they had previously. And they may well become independent before Alberta, with charging off in their own direction. At any rate, in summary, what I'm saying is we need bottom up and top down. We need bottom up. We need a better technology to make sure this stupidity never happens again. And we need top down. We need leadership that reinvents democracy. And if it hadn't been for COVID, none of these things would have been on the table. So thank you, COVID. It was something that revealed the rot that we were all so previously unaware of.
You're absolutely right about the truth. We're saying this all the time here for the last over a year. It's throwing the truth at someone is like hitting a squash ball at the wall, just bounces back. So people don't want the truth. You're exactly right. They want whatever will put money in their pocket or this. But this is what this reason we reached out now is not to just get you back on and whine about COVID, but there's something happening with doctors. I mean, AI is coming in, and a lot of GPs would go the way of the dodo with AI if they could get away with it. And we're saying, well, what do people want from a doctor? And that's the only person who's not a doctor here. Most of us people want a doctor who's going to tell us the truth. And we live in a society now where the doctors can't, because APRA, in Australia, it's APRA, is terrorizing the doctors. And these are the doctors they've done it to. And I think they've publicly destroyed Mark Hobart, Dr. Miley, Dr. Nixon, as Borchos, and the others, to actually terrorize other doctors. You want to take us on? Look what we've done to these ones.
Michael, it's going to get. Your point is going to be irrelevant.
Okay.
AI is already, in today's iteration, superior to GPs for the diagnosis of a new complaint.
Wow.
A. B, they are much superior than a GP in empathy after the virtual consultation has taken place. Remember that Western governments are bankrupt. It's a Ponzi scheme. We all know about Ponzi schemes. You borrow to pay the interest on the money you borrowed. We're bankrupt. Doctors are expensive. AI is better. GPs are toast. You won't go to a clinic. You'll log on from your home computer and you'll have a very satisfactory conversation with a robot that makes you feel good and is actually better than your GP. They'll save an incredible amount of money because the software, even today, the software is going to be constantly improving with AI. It's going to cost pennies a pop in a bankrupt system. So it's not just cashiers at Walmart. It's not just lawyers. It's not just GPs. AI is going to transform the workplace, but in particular medicine, because it's all we can afford.
Yeah, two things, Roger. I worry about the hallucination problem. All of these large language models have a degree of hallucination until they. I know most of the profession is currently hallucinating with respect to COVID, so it's hard to, the relative game, a sane AI versus a insane ideological doctor is I think you're right. It's not a close call, but you might not be aware, in Australia, in a resource-rich state called Western Australia, there is moves for what is called secession, and so the same. I think this is a global pattern, but rather than which party forms or who secedes, do you know what matters to me? Whether or not we have our human rights, whether or not we have to undo this monopoly, which of registration. This licensing and registration monopoly, which is held by groups like APRA in Australia, which controls whether or not you can work as a doctor or a medical practitioner. This was a disaster. Dr. Benjamin Rush, one of the signers of the American Declaration of Independence, he argued after he signed it, he was the only doctor there, that there needed to be protection of medical freedom, your ability to choose where you go for treatment. He was worried about the concentration. This is in 1776. He was worried about the concentration of medical authority and the creation of monopolies that could compel you to accept a treatment. And they laughed at him at the time. They didn't disagree with him. They just thought the healing profession was so fragmented 250 years ago. They couldn't imagine a time like this where Dr. Rush was right, and then we would have a monopoly on licensing and the conscription of the profession, and so whatever state forms, whoever succeeds, whatever happens in the future, for me, there is one key thing that we have to always keep in mind, regardless of anyone who wants to organize our future, that we put medical freedom and choice back, and we have to break these monopolies on licensing. So
I think we're all agreed, Paul. But we're the choir. We're the choir. I've been around this block on the hustings for 6 years. I'm speaking to the choir all the time.
Yeah,
the great
right.
unwashed out there is defined in a very simple. The great unwashed are defined very, very simply. If you're an observer of society, the first dramatic thing that defines society is the selfie. It's all about me. 2 inches around my feet. Get out of my space, leave me alone. The average individual doesn't give a tinker's damn about freedom. They'll trade it off for a trinket. Look at an experience that I have every other day, an addiction I have, going through McDonald's for a small coffee, $1.05 with a half cream. Okay, so I'm behind a truck going through the drive-through. What do you see? Tap and go, tap and go, tap and go. Digital currency. Do you think McDonald's would love to see the disappearance of cash? Of course they would. Retailers are going to love digital currency. So it's all there for everyone to see, but it's an inexorable progress towards their ultimate control that they're looking for. The average individual does not care about freedom. They want to be left alone to enjoy life in a hedonistic way. What we need is a different approach to freedom. It's called economic freedom, not health freedom or all the other political freedom of speech freedoms. You put money in people's genes and they'll vote for you. And it's the pitch is the classic political pitch of bait and switch. You get elected on the basis of economics, the money in your genes. And then you switch. Once you're in power, you switch to the preservation of freedom, which is, of course, much more important. But you'll never get elected, in my opinion, on the basis of freedom. Too many people think it's dicey. They just want to be left alone to enjoy their lifestyle. Why don't you get lost? I don't understand it. I don't even want to listen to you, because right now I've accommodated. I've got enough money in my jeans to go on holiday once a year, gas in the tank, kids to hockey, etc. I'm sorry, but I'm very pessimistic.
No, you're right. No,
I agree that the economic thing is what drives voters, but I think we've already seen the biggest assault on freedom in human history. You know, the whole lockdown thing, which is medical martial law that we experience.
But it's over. It's in the hindview mirror. It's over.
No, do you know it's not? They've put out, Australia has just unleashed a thing called Alert, which is like the alerts that go blast for your phone even if it's on silent, to warn you of a tsunami or a bushfire or an earthquake. And it was they did the test the other day. It's able to locate down to a city block. They can direct this. It's direct cell power to phone, so it enables surveillance. It enables you to be able to lock down a very small area or send messages and instructions to a very small area. But that didn't bother me. What bothered me is they included public health and biosecurity as reasons to control and allocate the system. So to me, they're setting up the infrastructure for for future lockdowns, future control, future tyranny.
Yeah.
And people need to wake the fuck up because you know, your money in your pocket won't mean nothing if you're not allowed to leave your home, or if you're not allowed to speak your truth. So I agree with your point that they care much more about the money in their pocket.
You see, we're not at the tipping point yet. You know, certainly the concerns about freedom and the importance people put on it, their appreciation of that will get finer and better as they keep on turning the screws, and at the same time, the economy is going to get worse, devaluation, etc. You know, I'm in Alberta. We have a prime minister, so-called in Ottawa, called Carney. I would go down on bended knee before that technocratic idiot. I would go down on bended knee and say, please make it worse. Turn the screws. Because only by getting breadlines and soup kitchens and mortgage defaults are you going to get people's attention.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's I just want to go back a bit though of what you said about AI, because we've got 3 GPs above us, even though Mark's gone off somewhere. What do you think, Miley, when I know you're facing deregistration, but what do you think about the AI taking over and being better than GPs? What's your thoughts on that?
Can you hear me? I thought I was being muted. It's I think it might get incorporated into the practice of GP. I can't see it taking over the GP at this point, because you still need a doctor to make doing testing, making a diagnosis and things like that. I don't think that at this, in the near future, that we're gonna have GP taking over. AI taking over the GP's role as such. So it might get incorporated in the way they practice. But I can't see it, because you still need to do a physical examination. You still need prescribing and things like that. So I can't see it happening.
How about you, David? I'll just ask David first. How about you, Dr. Nixon? What are your thoughts?
I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'll just put the mic back on. No, I think
Dr. Hodkinson.
Okay.
I have to go out and come back.
All right.
Okay.
What about you, David?
Well, I think AI has improved a lot in the last 6 to 12 months. I was just thinking about false concerns about hallucinations and things. The AI that will be introduced into general practice won't suffer from those problems. I'm convinced of that. I think they can do a lot more with the AI. I certainly saw Dr. Hodkinson shaking his head about the prescribing and the diagnosis and things. I mean, we managed a lot with telehealth during COVID. It's not going to be a lot different.
I hear from friends, not in the profession, who've been to see their GP, and this is what happens routinely. Because it's all about the electronic medical record that's on the screen. You barely get eye contact with the GP. They are looking stuff up as the conversation is taking place about the latest interactions of drugs and so on. And it's not an effective interaction. You might as well be speaking to a robot. Well, that is exactly what AI is going to give you. and you'll end up feeling stroked. The empathy is going to be beautiful. You'll leave feeling as if you've been really cared for very, very well. And please come back again.
Extraordinary time, isn't it? Yeah, you're absolutely right. We had a Dr. Robin Kelly on from New Zealand, and he takes 45 minutes with all of his patients. He doesn't care about money, and he's well loved over there, although under a lot of attack. But he said exactly what you said. He said that's how you look at the doctor, you look at the side of his head, looks over this, and that's it.
Exactly.
And he's Googling it. And you're
Exactly.
thinking, well, I could Google it myself, you know? So why am I paying you $50 to Google it for me? So
Yep.
you can see the pressures on it. And that's what I'm thinking. Maybe there's a redefining of, is there a patient doctor relationship with GPs? I know a lot of people over in Australia, at least, especially people my parents' age, just adore their GPs. You know what I mean? It's like
Sure.
there's something there. But
Well-
but here we are on the precipice. So truth, we've discovered as the freedom movement, people don't care that much about freedom. I mean, we don't even have a working definition of it. What's a t-shirt of what freedom is? If you had to, if you're in an elevator pitch with Spielberg and he had 2 minutes to tell him, I've got a story about freedom, and he said, what's freedom? And you got a minute to tell him. I used to ask people all the time, the best description I ever get was from a Polish woman who grew up under communist rule, and she said, "This is freedom. Leave me the fuck alone."
You know, we have a lawyer in Ottawa. His name is Bruce Pardy. He's an academic lawyer, and he's very much on side for Alberta independence, and he gives talks in Alberta about it. And here is his concept of freedom. Government does nothing. We tell them in a very limited, constrained version what they are allowed to do. And other than that, they leave us alone.
Yeah.
We obviously need a police force. We need borders. We need all kinds of regulations of how fast you can drive, etc. But beyond the obvious, we tell them, as opposed to the other way around that's happening now, of them telling us what we can do. That is a very open-ended concept of freedom, in which, I have the right to offend you if I wish, so long as I'm not threatening you. That is a right that I have. Get off my back. Shut up. Get out of my way. I'll say what the fuck I want about you, and I'll say it on social media, and no one's going to imprison me. I think social media is one of the worst things that's happening in society. I don't have any social media presence at all. I like to live as anonymously as possible. The less the idiots know about me, the better. So it's a wonderful concept that government does nothing except what we tell them they may be allowed to do.
So it's a fear of the government, or the government is frightened of the people rather than the people frightened of the government. Because in Australia now, people, to be honest, a lot of people act like serfs. Like the government is lords and princes and stuff like that. The government can seem to do anything they want. They get done for corruption. Nothing happens at all. They might resign eventually, but no one goes to court. No one gets sacked. I mean, people just feel powerless.
Well,
a lot of people in Australia feel.
They get kicked upstairs, don't they? Like Jacinda did in New Zealand. You screw up and you get promoted. That's the way it is in all large institutions and corporations. I've seen it up close and personal in Toronto, in large healthcare organizations. You screw up and you get promoted. You're too hot. You're too hot. It's got to be buried.
Can I ask, have you seen the other thing we've been, no one's talking about over here, but it's a big threat, is the cost of living, homelessness and all this is going through the roof. a mass migration like having in Canada, but infertility is something that pops up
Yep.
and gets silenced. Can you
Yep.
tell us what infertility like is happening in Canada on the infertility issue?
Well, like everywhere, there's a great reluctance to document, investigate, and quantify. I mean, let's face it, in this entire business, there are only two statistics that are uncontestable: number of live births and number of deaths. That's it. That's it. Everything else is dangerous to quantify. So, to answer your question, no one knows. No one really knows how many people died actually of COVID. No one really knows if it was any worse than a regular seasonal flu, where sadly vulnerable people died. We don't know. We also don't know the scale of vaccine injuries because they refuse to document it, other than the VAERS program in the States, etc., which is hopeless. We don't know. They don't want us to know. So we're dealing with a dearth of information, which can only be substituted for by good old-fashioned medical common sense. And that includes, by the way, alternative therapies, which I dumped on routinely before COVID. I still do with chiroquackery, but with homeopathic medicine, for example, I still dump on that. But naturopathic medicine, I pop all kinds of pills every day now. I've got a fantastic naturopath. I used to think they were quacks, but there's a huge place in medicine for alternative therapies.
Mm.
And that's being dumped on too. There's a real movement in Canada to restrict the manufacturing and sale of naturopathic so-called herb remedies. So
that would come from lobbyists from big pharma because they're impeding their products.
That's
Sure.
certainly a global thing too.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we care for you. You see, you don't understand how dangerous these things can be. You have to trust us. We're protecting you. What fucking bullshit. I take these pills by the handful every day and I'm still alive. And I hope it makes me live longer. By the way, there was a fantastic article recently. It was Paul Merrick who did a podcast. You know Paul Merrick, obviously.
Yeah.
He did a podcast on diabetes and pre-diabetes and the metabolic syndrome and all that. And it's the first time I'd heard anyone that I consider reputable talk about aged garlic extract. Have you heard of that? Aged garlic extract. It's supposed to have quite remarkable impact on general health and longevity. Yeah.
Yes, we did a show with Dr. George Fareed, and he wanted to talk about an article in the Desert Review by I believe it was by Justice Hope, Dr. Justice Hope, and this is one of the ingredients he talked about in terms of targeting the cancer stem cells, which the current chemotherapy and radiation doesn't do. It doesn't attack the slow moving. He mentioned ivermectin, mebendazole, fenbendazole group of things, aged garlic, and I think and there was one other which I think was
turmeric.
Yes, I think it was the curcumin was the fourth one. So it's an exciting time in terms of understanding. I've talked on the show with Michael about Paul Merrick's paper, his monograph on cancer care, already 2 years ago. So it's wonderful that we're developing insight. But you can see that was one of my crimes, just like with Miley and Mark. talking about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and vitamin D in 2021.
Right.
You know, that was one of my, and that was my passion. I saw that we didn't need to be fearful of COVID, that we as doctors had this, we knew how to treat it. As a critical care doctor, I didn't want people to get sick and end up in hospital or in intensive care. And it was completely avoidable. And we now know that that is absolutely true. And one of the things that they threw at Fauci the other day was exactly this, you know, that we knew that hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin were curative. Even DARPA knew this. We have the documents now released by the whistleblower Lieutenant Colonel Joe Murphy, that they knew, and he lied. He withheld.
Yep.
So, you know, you could say this is, you know, I couldn't understand as a doctor why they weren't telling the public health, the so-called public health, weren't talking about vitamin D for the elderly. You know, if they really cared about it, so it was really clear early on, once you saw that there was treatment, that they were withholding life-saving treatment,
you know,
to get people into the EUA of the synthetic gene shots. Carry on.
My best friend at school was a fellow called David Grimes, who became a famous gastroenterologist in Britain. And we parted company for many years and got back together quite recently. But David did an absolutely brilliant thing. He was looking at the obituaries in the BMJ and noticed a disproportionate number of names that seemed to have Pakistani origin. And so he thought that this was probably due to vitamin D deficiency. And he wrote a letter to the British Pakistani Doctors Organization, and to say that he thinks that their deaths due to COVID or whatever virus it was could have been prevented if they weren't vitamin D deficient, because they had pigmented skins, they were inside all day long, they were unaware of the need for vitamin D supplementation, and they were all essentially hugely vitamin D deficient. So he sent this letter out, which got distributed to all their members, and guess what? They stopped dying. Just basic old-fashioned medicine, you know. It was, and if any of you are interested in it, he's so deep into vitamin D and the evolutionary aspects of it, and quite apart from the chemistry of it. He runs a blog called Dr. David Grimes, Grimes, David Grimes, and it's a very deep examination of vitamin D in all its aspects. For example, I didn't know this. You're in Australia. You should know this. You should all know this, and I didn't. Do you know where vitamin D comes from?
Cholesterol in the sun.
Vitamin D in pills that we consume comes from Australia. It comes from Australian sheep that are shorn. The wool is sent to China for the lanolin to be extracted, and it's the lanolin that's the feedstock for the modification to make vitamin D that they put into the capsules and sell to the rest of the world. New Zealand and Australian sheep.
Wow.
So don't piss off the Chinese. They got you.
I'm not worried about the Chinese. I'm worried about the New Zealanders with the sheep and drinking that vitamin D. That's just my thing. There's what a time. Where do you see us going as a species from here? A lot of people are saying COVID has changed people. I actually think people were the same before it. I think COVID just exposed who we are. It didn't change us. And there's a lot of silence here. There's still a veneer that goes up about people's faces in some conversations where you mention anything about the modern world and they just go blank. But I think they're fatigued. A lot of people have this stuff in their system. They're concerned about it. They've got people all around them getting cancer. They're waiting on them next. So there's just this, I don't know. There's this, the whole culture of our country has changed. We were seen as larrikins once, like Crocodile Dundee, but we weren't. We turned out to be people who would point out Anne Frank to the Nazis before they even asked where she was. And we're still grappling with that. We don't want to talk about it. Everyone says, "Oh, let's move on," because we want to forget the fact we became Nazis overnight. And I actually think the real problem we're facing isn't the Faucis, isn't Big Pharma. It's the compliance of the greater herd, the middle herd.
I agree.
You've got us on one side, the true believers on the other, and then this middle, and they are the ones that define history. And at the moment, they're just quietly, dodoistically almost heading into true tyranny. And we're just like banging on the windows going, stop. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think humans have been changed by the vaccine? You think this is just how human nature is? And, where do you see the hope in all of this?
Well, the objectives of the technocrats for control extends into every aspect of life. The average individual, as I said, until it starts hitting them in a much more personal way, they're not going to react. But by the time they do react, it'll probably be too late. Then they came for me and all that. I agree. It's a concerning future for our children. It's something that's very difficult to stop, given how profound it is. To me, the biggest success that they've had is to divide and conquer, to isolate us, to encourage us in our hedonistic lifestyle, consumed by a selfie and an iPhone, and only be concerned about ourselves. That makes us separate, isolated, and much, much easier to control. I think it's going to take probably a revolution. Not that I'm advocating anything violent or as catastrophic as some revolutions have been in history, but it's a slow creep towards the inevitable abyss. And you wake up one morning and it's too late. So I'm pessimistic. I'd love to see a fully ModCon cave in the Yukon, or maybe on Mars, some kind of escape hatch. I can accommodate. We can all accommodate. It's our kids that I'm concerned about, and their kids, and the destruction of the family, which to me is the most important consequence of everything. The destruction of the family and the denigration of women. There used to be the woman, the mother used to be the center of the family. She used to be it. She wasn't working because she didn't have to, because the economy wasn't as bad as it is now. And she did the homework and the laundry and the shopping and the cleaning, and even today, women are doing double duty with all of that and a job. So in Alberta, one of the key demographics for winning, in my opinion, is the working mother. The working mother. Remember, before the Second World War, most women did not work. They were incrementally forced to work to make the family economics make sense. And that was a gradual thing. So if you were to make a pitch to the cashier at Walmart to say, hey, you know what? Not only is your job going to disappear, but if you throw your lot in with us and help to make this province more prosperous, such that your husband, not a sexist comment, women are more important, Your husband would be putting enough money on the breakfast table for you not to work. And you could become the esteemed member of society called the mother, that's more important than anything that the men do. We used to defend the village. We don't have to do that anymore. We just empty our pockets on the breakfast table. That's it. Women do everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be recognized for it, and they need to be told that they can be empowered to change things because of they have a vote. 50% of the votes are women. Now, we have a rock star academic daughter. Reach for the stars. Not to say any female should not want to do anything that men do. Not saying that at all. What I am saying is women are hardwired to be nurturing mothers. I used to start off talks like this until my wife told me not to. I used to start off with a question. Ladies and gentlemen, why do women have breasts? They have breasts because they're hardwired to be nurturing, and we're not. And that has to be respected and admired. That's how to get those women on side.
I ain't touching the breast question. I have another answer to that, but I'll go up to Dr. Hobart. Dr. Hobart, what did you think of Dr. Hodgkinson's thoughts on AI taking over as GPs? What do you think humans will stoically defend their GPs, or do you think they'll cross over to AI, Mark? I'll just unmute you.
There we go. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure how serious Dr. Hodgkinson was about those comments about AI. I think AI is a ploy by the government or our controllers to control us, and they spin this. I think it's basically a myth, so-called artificial intelligence. There's such a thing as human intelligence, but there's no such thing as machine intelligence. As far as I can see, the only intelligence the machine can give you is what's been programmed into it by humans. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that GPs will be taken over by artificial intelligence. However, I do think that's the government's idea to get rid of GPs. They want to get rid of GPs. For example, in Australia now, I was just talking to the chemist across the road from my ex-practice, and his son's going to be a chemist and taking over, and his son is going to be taught how to prescribe medications for patients. And he's fitting out his pharmacy with a consultation room. And although his son has had no training in diagnosis or pathology or anything, he's going to be sitting down talking.
Oh, I lost him.
I think the whole system, eventually, this whole system will collapse into a government-controlled or totalitarian-controlled horror show, I suppose. But I think eventually this is not only is that intolerable, it's untenable. It just won't work. The system will collapse and will be left, as Dr. Hodgkinson said, to rebuilding trust between ourselves and forging a society based on trust and love. Yep. And that will be the way forward. I think we're going to learn a hard lesson here that we cannot base a society on hedonism and money. It just does not work. There are much more important things to life than that. So that's my thoughts.
I agree with you, Mark, but it's the realization of that is probably going to be too late in the day. It's a creep. It's not a cliff. And with respect to AI and GPs, I mean, look, we are bankrupt. Every government is scrambling to save a penny here and a penny there, increase taxes here, increase taxes there. That is unsustainable. They are looking for major savings. And the reason doctors are prime GPs, a prime target, is because of the huge amount of money that's spent and because they can be replaced with a substantially lower cost with AI that will be pitched as it's all we can afford. And remember, just look at us on the screen here. We're a bloody nuisance. We speak up, right? We're educated. We're prepared to stand up and say our piece. Government doesn't want that. They want control. Get rid of them. They're expensive and they're noisy. Get rid of them.
That's the plan.
Let me give you some hope, Dr. Hodgkinson. There's we've got a huge amount of homelessness in Australia now. It's going like crazy. And they're pouring migrants in from, basically subcontinent Asia and all this. And what's happening is they're coming in this side. And to be honest, white people, the Australians we know, are getting pushed out. So I went to interview some of them, and I interviewed a few days ago. I interviewed one woman who used to be a veteran. Now she's living in a van, and she never really played like the victim, but she was trying to be optimistic. And inside a van was written with all these quotes to try to keep her spirits up. And she said she needed a clutch, and I told her, honestly, if you do an interview, you mention the clutch will get fixed. Half an hour after I posted it, the first mechanic reached in and said, I'll fix that. By the end of the day, 2 other veterans had bought her the clutch and they're delivering it today. So other people are offering her places to stay outside of town and get herself together.
Yep.
I think if it gets exposed out there and people can see on a community level, they go, and so the mechanic, I mean, he's not going to care about the money. He's just going to do. So I think this can emerge. And so where you're saying you're trying to go into the country independent, what we're talking about is getting rid of globalization. I mean, we had a Lima Agreement in Australia. Before the Lima Agreement in 1974, we made everything. You look at Australia in 1970, probably the same for Canada. Everybody was skinny, and everything you saw, we made it ourselves.
Yep.
Now the only thing we make is coffee, and we do that with imported coffee. Is that, basically, it's globalization is finished. Only ones have benefited is the billionaires now, and so that. Do you think that could be a way back, like not just seceding, but actually low tech versus high tech, actually going back to communities?
I've seen lots of examples of what you described, but it's all local, it's small scale, and it's not a macro solution. It will continue, and the people that are doing it, I admire deeply. I know one of them extremely well, and he'll be a survivor no matter what happens with Armageddon. But it's not a macro solution, unfortunately. People have to understand the big picture of economics in a way that it influences them personally. And the moniker that I like to describe that, people like to leave with meetings with something to remember, not statistics. Their eyes glaze over. The zeros mean nothing. Here's the best moniker for economic freedom. It's called ABC. Everyone can remember ABC. It stands for anywhere but China. To take control of the means of production, if I could borrow a term from the commies.
Yeah.
Take back the means of production. Unless you make stuff, things you can handle, touch, unless you make stuff, you're done. China is going to just smother you.
Yeah, that's happening here. There's no manufacturing hardly in Australia now. The few I've interviewed while traveling around, they're all on the edge of giving up. They're actually doing it out of stubbornness. They're actually not. It's not economically viable anymore. Yeah, you try to end on hope, but it's a really interesting time. I mean, there's hope that people are changing, but I don't know. Oh, the other thing before we go that we don't have here yet is maids. As a doctor, what are your thoughts on maids? Because Canada, you seem to be getting the hang of it. It's almost like Aldi now.
Well, the tragedy is that we all know on this call, we used to ease people's passing routinely. The Brompton cocktail, right? It used to be written in the chart. The nurses, it was with the family's understanding. It was done very ethically. No one was being murdered. It was a compassionate thing that, at least in my training. And by the way, I've been a few years in general practice too. I know that field quite well before I became a pathologist. So, you know, MAID is an industrialization of what we used to do. And unfortunately, it's getting out of control. In Canada, we have the highest per capita death from MAID in the world. And they're constantly expanding the criteria that would allow you to consider it. It's not that you will consider it. It's that the system will suggest it for you. And you know, it's getting to the point where you need to put it in your will. You know, I do not want to be vaccinated when I'm unconscious. You know, I do not want MAID. What I do want is compassionate end of life care.
Yeah, it's powerful, wasn't it? Because I brought it up with the homeless people yesterday, saying, you know, if you're in Canada, they'd be offering you euthanasia, and it's to sort of say this is, and that's well, there was one point where the woman, the veteran, talked about how worthless she was, how worthless she felt, how worthless society made her feel, and I thought this really is the war. The war is on the worth of human beings. And they're winning in a way because people feel they don't have the right to speak. They almost don't have the right to think. They don't have the right to protest. I mean, basically, the only freedom they seem to want is the freedom to endure. And I feel that's some way to reach out to people and say, actually, no, you're a powerful human being. I don't know if you're here for a reason, but you're fucking here. And why should you be a slave? What's the benefits of being a slave and giving all your power away? How do you benefit from that? You know.
In fact, to end on a somewhat sick note, maybe we should offer Dear Dr. Fauci MAID as an alternative to the remainder of his life fighting lawsuits every second of his day. MAID, you know, you should seriously consider it, Tony. It's the easy way out, Tony. It's better than a torn bedsheet at the end of a bunk in a solitary, you know.
Forget maids, just give him his 10 boosters. I mean, they're all waiting there for him. Then we won't have to do maids. Yeah. Doctor, thank you for coming on. I have to say, I love you. I love the way you speak. I love the way you just don't give a fuck. I actually think it's essential now that we have people that do that because everyone else has just been crushed into compliance. I think it's really terrific. So I'm sorry to take the piss of your face, but I just love it. Every time I see you, you make me giggle. Any doctors, would you like to say anything to Dr. our esteemed guest before we take off?
Well, great to see you, Roger, and keep up the good work. Maintain the rage. I tell you, I'm still underneath this. I'm seeing some of the rants that have come out since the Fauci revelations and the diary, and people are starting to get very angry, and I think it should be. I think the system is not long for this world economically and all that, and thank you for all your efforts. Go on, Mark.
I just wanted to say what an inspiration Dr. Hodgkinson was for me, and he took no steps backward. And I thought that was wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Hodgkinson.
David?
Yeah, thank you very much. I certainly remember some of the talks for the doctors for COVID ethics in the early days. So thank you for
And Dr. Miley.
Same for me. So I saw Dr. Hodgkinson very early on in the pandemic, and your speech in this auditorium, and I was at that stage. I was waiting for a lot of specialists and people with great credential to speak out, and it was hardly anyone. So I saw your speech, and I was very, very encouraged. So thank you.
Charlie, in the background just wait. Charlie, you want to say anything?
Oh, I do. I just want to say that the whole session has been incredibly stimulating, inspiring. Roger, you were a beacon of hope for all of us that believed in medical free speech. And it's good to see that you've aged well. There's no sign of dementia there. I can say that from a neurological scientist, that you're still very sharp. You still have passion. And it's, again, an absolute inspiration. You're an absolute legend, Roger, and you should know that that your name resonated all around the world to us doctors who believed in doing the right thing by our patients. And so it's been a real honor to listen to you. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to end with one word, and it's not original. It's from a podcaster, a Substacker in Britain called Peter Halligan. Peter Halligan. If you don't subscribe to him, please do. He's recovering from a stroke. He's penniless, and he writes a most no holds barred commentary on life. A lot of it the UK, but a lot of that is referenced, is relevant to Australia, I'm sure. The word that he ends all his Substacks with is onwards. Onwards.
Onwards.
Onwards.
Yeah.
Don't let it get you down. We got to move on.
There's look, just to finish, actually, it's something better over here. And these guys have heard this. There's a thing called the 12 Apostles. They're monoliths off the coast of Victoria. And there used to be a lot more. Now there's only 3. Now these are just limestone sort of remnants of the cliff, but they still stand there alone. But they haven't been brought down by tsunamis. They haven't been brought down by earthquakes. They've been brought down by endless little waves just smashing at their base. And that's what I think we are if we keep going. We're eroding it from the bottom. And it's the war of the little waves. I know we can't take them out. Like every time we have something big like Fauci, we think this will end it. And it usually doesn't. So, but I think if we just keep pounding and pounding away, who knows?
When we go toes up, it will be nice to have achieved something. But even more important is when we go toes up to say we tried.
That's where to end it. Okay, this is a Café Locked Out's version of Welcome to Country. Thank you for coming on, Dr. Hodgkinson, and we'll replay this tomorrow night. That's been a complete joy. See you so much. Bye-bye.
Really enjoyed it too.
Cool. See you soon.
Thank you.
Gravity feels stronger these days. Is that why our energy continues to fade? It's like we've woken up on someone else's earth. It's like we've all woken up on somebody else's earth. Where were we when everything was changed? Was it when they made our houses our cage? For ever since then, everything we loved is now another reason to be ashamed. Why are we putting up with all of this? Don't we want all of our kids to know that they are all wanted, and that this land is their home? Why are we putting up with all of this? Don't we want all of our kids to know that they are all wanted, and that this land is their home? Corellas are on fire tonight, sharing their defiant larrikin soul. A larrikin song our kids may never sing. In the silent world we're building for them, a quiet world full of debt and shame that we are leaving to them. A silent world where the larrikins were the choirs of yesterday. Why are we putting up with all of this? Don't we want all of our kids to know that they are all Australians, and that this land is their home? Why are we putting up with all of this? Don't we want all of our kids to know that they are all Australians, and that this land is their home?